Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for spooky season, I've been doing a lot of lists of books that I think people should read that kind of fit the vibe. They aren't necessarily Halloween oriented, October or spooky season books. I do have a ton of videos on those types of books, but I wanted to do ones like slashers and haunted houses, which are already uploaded, and this video, which is cozy horror. So I think cozy horror is a little bit difficult to define. I like to think of it as kind of comfort horror reads, books that do not disturb me, that aren't super gross out, that kind of borderline horror, but still kind of have that cute small town, read it by the fire late at night, and you're not going to get too disturbed reading it kind of vibe. So I have a bunch of books here that kind of go through different levels of what I would define as cozy horror. And so some are definitely going to be cozier than others. Some are going to be a little bit more on like the Gothic side. Some are going to have a little bit more of like a traditional scare factor to them. And some are going to be kind of like hocus pocusy, whimsical, but kind of things that I would personally define as cozy horror. Now I have 7 books here today. There's a bunch of books that I thought of including, like Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, which I do think is a fantastic cozy horror read. It's very, very sweet. And it's aimed at a younger audience, as well as books by Katrina Monroe. I did really enjoy They Drown Our Daughters, but I have books here that I think just fit the mark just a little bit more, so we're going to dive in and chat about those. So first up, I have to include Darcy Coats on this list. She is our queen of cozy horror. I think that she is the reason I love cozy horror in literature so much, and I had so many books that I wanted to choose from her because almost everything that she writes kind of fits this category. But I wanted to start with the Caro Haunt, and I'm not going to lie, I do have another Darcy Coats book on here as well, but I do believe that almost all of her bibliography would fit very, very, very well into the cozy horror category. Because, however, this is one of my favorite books from her, and I think it's a really interesting spin on the kind of ghost tour and people going into a haunted house that they shouldn't. I believe actually this one's a hotel, but I absolutely adore this story, and I think it's one of her strongest, so I definitely wanted to suggest it. So it says, "The dead are restless here. Remy is a tour guide for the notoriously haunted Caro house. When she's asked to host guests for a week-long stay in order to research Caro's phenomena, she hopes to finally experience some of the sightings that made the house famous. At first, it's everything they hoped for. Then a storm moves in, cutting off their contact with the outside world, and things quickly take a sinister turn. Doors open on their own. Seances go disastrously wrong. Their spirit medium wanders through the house at night, seemingly in a trance. But it isn't until one of the guests dies under strange circumstances that Remy is forced to consider the possibility that the ghost of the house's original owner, a twisted serial killer, still walks the halls. And by then, it's too late to escape." So this reminds me a lot of a cozy version of like not only the story of H.H. Holmes, but also Richard Matheson's Hell House, as well as Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. It kind of has a lot of that kind of mystery going on, while still maintaining a lot of coziness. You don't feel a lot of dread at the end. I will say it has a much lighter ending than most of those other stories that I mentioned. But yes, I really do enjoy this book. I think it's fantastic. I think it's atmospheric, and it's one of her longer novels. It's almost 400 pages, and I just breezed through it. I adore this book so much. Next up, I would consider this necessarily cozy horror, but it is set in a very, 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 very cozy town, and it has some people who do some pretty horrible things, so it kind of fits in it, and there's a witch. But this is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This is the first book I ever read from Rachel Harrison. I have a lot of mixed feelings on this book, but at the end of the day, I do think that it is a book absolutely worth reading, and the small town setting in this, I believe it's in upstate New York, is absolutely magnificent. And it is a very interesting spin on the witch story. Again, what happens in this book is not necessarily scary. It is more of a character study of situations. And depending on how you interpret the ending, it's either a happy ending or a very scary ending. And I think that's what's really unique about this book. And as I say all the time, I love, 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 love Rachel Harrison's voice. I think she has a very, very strong millennial colloquial tone that I relate to very, very much. And even though I don't like a lot of her characters, I I do tend to absolutely adore her writing, and I think Cackle is a perfect example of this. I was completely captivated by this story, even though I don't necessarily agree with the message at the end of this book, but I do think that the setting is absolutely perfect, and even though it is more of like a situational drama, depending on how you interpret the ending, it really can be seen as a horror. So it says, all her life, Annie has played it nice and safe. After being unceremoniously dumped by her longtime boyfriend, she seeks a fresh start. Annie accepts a new teaching position and moves from Manhattan to a small village upstate. She's stunned by how perfect and picturesque the town is. The people are all friendly and warm. Her new apartment is dreamy too, aside from the oddly persistent spider infestation. Then Annie meets Sophie, beautiful, charming, magnetic Sophie, who takes a special interest in Annie and wants to be her friend. More importantly, she wants Annie to stop apologizing and start living for herself. That's how she lives. Annie can't help but gravitate towards the self-possessed Sophie and begins to spend more and more time with her despite the fact that the rest of the townsfolk seem a little afraid of her. And like, okay, there are some things. Sophie's appearance is uncanny and ageless. Her mansion in the middle of the woods feels a bit unearthly, and she does seem to wield a certain power. But she couldn't be, could she? I think this book is so fun, and if you are scared of spiders, don't worry. These are the coziest of spiders ever. They kind of remind me of the mice in Cinderella. So there's that. This is definitely a fun one. It's definitely a unique one. And if you're a fan of Rachel Harrison and haven't read this, you will absolutely love this book, I think. Okay, next up. This is a book that I actually don't talk about that frequently on my channel, and I don't know why, because I really, really enjoy this. But this is The Deep by Alma Katsu. Alma Katsu writes a lot of historical horror fiction where she takes real tragic events and adds a supernatural element to them. She's probably most famous for her novel The Hunger, which is a retelling of the Donner Party. This is a kind of fantastical supernatural retelling of the sinking of the Titanic. So there is elements of real historical horror and real historical figures alongside this kind of occult interest in like seances and ghosts that was very, very popular during the time of the Titanic sinking. So I think it's a very nice blend, and I think in this book you do get where the occult side of this story really kind of adds some interesting elements to this tale, unlike the Donner Party, where I don't think adding a supernatural element to anything to really change how horrific and tragic that event was. And again, this one also very horrific, very tragic. But I do put this on the more cozy horror because it does kind of feel like almost like a Victorian ghost story. Like if this wasn't rooted in real events, I feel like it would be a very cool, cozy ghost story. And I think the writing on Alma Katsu's part was very, very captivating for me. I enjoyed this book quite a lot. So it says, someone or something must be haunting the ship. Between mysterious disappearances and sudden deaths, the guests of the Titanic have found themselves suspended in an eerie, unsettling twilight zone from the moment they set sail. Several of them, including maid Annie Hebley, guest Mark Fletcher, and millionaires Madeline Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim, are convinced there's something sinister, almost otherworldly, afoot. But before they can locate the source of the danger, as the world knows, disaster strikes. Years later, Annie, having survived that fateful night, has attempted to put her life back together. Working as a nurse on the 6th voyage of the Titanic's sister ship, the Britannic, newly refitted as a hospital ship, she happens across an unconscious Mark, now a soldier fighting in World War I. At first, Annie is thrilled and relieved to learn that he too survived the sinking, but soon Mark's presence awakens deep, buried feelings and secrets, forcing her to reckon with the demons of her past, as they both discover that the terror may not yet be over. Brilliantly combining the supernatural with the height of historical disaster, The Deep is an exploration of love and destiny, desire and innocence, and above all, a quest to understand how our choices can lead us inexorably toward our doom. This is definitely one of those books that might not be for everybody, and again, I don't always love including historical tragedies into kind of capitalizing off of creating a supernatural story for entertainment, but I do think that the way that this book handles it is very respectful. It does take in a lot of the historical accounts of what happened, and doesn't just focus on the Titanic. So you do have another boat in there. But I do think that it does kind of, in a weird way, fit into the cozy horror category. I think Amakatsu kind of really hits the tone with like that kind of like turn of the century Gothic story that comes out in this story. Okay, next. Definitely on a much more lighthearted side, we have The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. Now, this is the beginning of a series. I actually think the Kiss Curse is a stronger book, but I do absolutely adore The Ex-Hex. This is book 1. Kiss Curse is book 2. Kiss Curse is hilarious. This is, again, I say this every time I talk about this book, it's like Halloween Town meets Sex in the City for adults. It's awesome. They're so fun. It's a romance that has a lot of magic and monsters and ghosts, and it's just fun, and it is like the perfect palate cleanser series whenever I've read anything just too heavy. So I'm gonna read the back. Never mix vodka and witchcraft. 9 years ago, Vivian Jones nursed her broken heart like any young witch would. Vodka, weepy music, bubble baths, and a curse on the horrible boyfriend. Sure, Vivi knows she shouldn't use her magic this way, but with only an orchid hayride-scented candle on hand, she isn't worried it will cause him anything more than a bad hair day or two. That is until Reese Penhallow, descendant of the town's ancestors, breaker of hearts, and annoyingly just as gorgeous as he always was, returns to Graves Glen, Georgia. What should be a quick trip to recharge the town's ley lines and make an appearance at the annual fall fair turns disastrously wrong. With one calamity after another striking Reese, Vivi realizes her silly little ex-hex may not have been so harmless after all. Suddenly, Graves Glen is under attack from murderous wind-up toys, a pissed-off ghost, and a talking cat with some interesting things to say. Vivi and Reese have to ignore their off-the-charts chemistry to work together to save the town and find a way to break the breakup curse before it's too late. This is just so fun. Again, if you want something like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, not the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, this is going to be that. It's funny, it's cute, it's campy, but it still has horror elements, and it's set in the most adorable little cozy town in Georgia, and I wish it was real, and it reminds me a lot of Savannah, and I just like to tell myself that it is. But I love that, and I love the series, and I can't wait for the third book. However, if you are looking for less Sabrina the Teenage Witch and more The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, look no further than the Legacy Witches series by Cass Kay. I was introduced to this series through Twisted Retreat. I do have their beautiful edition right here. And I think this is just a perfect witchy story. Again, it's still kind of campy, still kind of cozy, but like The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, it does have some darker sides to it, but it also has a lot of really incredible world building that I absolutely adore. And it is set in this amazing fictionalized version of Salem that I think really captures the charm of Salem in real life while still being able to utilize this kind of new age world of witchcraft that the book creates without feeling like, oh, it's Salem, it's like the land of the witches, of course we have to do this. It feels very, very connected to the town and the soul of the town in real life, and I really, really appreciate that. So I'm going to read the inside flap. Seeing ghosts and coming from a long line of murderous witches has made life less than sunshine and rainbows for Vianna Roots. When she inherits the family's haunted house, she decides flipping the rundown dump for cash is the smartest move. But the ghosts that haunt her have a different plan. After encountering the spirit of a missing local witch, Vianna finds herself drawn into the mystery of who murdered the girl, and her meddling draws the attention of the oldest coven in Salem. When they make an offer on the house, Vianna hesitates. Cutting ties with the demon who possesses her home and the transgender outcast witch, who may just be the best friend she never knew she wanted, isn't so simple. The tainted legacy of the witches before her was why she ran 10 years ago. But this time, Vianna is ready to prove that the past doesn't define her. The series is so fun. And it has just really like lively and unique, interesting characters. And again, the world building in this is great. I really cannot wait for book 3. I don't love series typically, but these are two series that I am typically down to read. You're going to see that I like series when it comes to cozy horror, especially if I feel very connected to very tangible characters. And that is how all of the characters in the series that I'm talking about in this video really feel to me, and I feel very, very close to them, and I would love to see them in like their own TV series. And the main characters of Legacy Witches I just think are absolutely fantastic and really hold the story up alongside, of course, the town and the world building and kind of the magic of everything itself. This is also a great atmospheric book and has just like the coolest haunted house in it. It's like a house possessed by a demon, which is like just, it's lovely. Not even in the way that you guys normally think of like a demon haunting a house. Like this is like literally like an anthropomorphic house demon. It's very weird, but I love it. Okay, this is a book I don't talk about too often on my channel. And this is more like Gothic adjacent. It has a very, very cozy Gothic kind of slow burn tone for the first 2/3 of the book. And then the final third is just like, what? Like, it just goes absolutely bonkers, and just completely flips how I see this book entirely. I remember like literally reading this book and being like, wow, this is very much a slow burn Gothic. And then all of a sudden it just like ramps up to 11 and just goes like, it just goes crazy. But this is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I'm going to read the inside plot. After receiving her frantic letter from her newlywed cousin, Noemi Taboada, I think that's how I say it, heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside, unsure what she will find. Noemi is an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, more suited to cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough, smart, and not afraid. Not of her cousin's New English husband, a stranger who is both menacing and alluring. Not of his father, the ancient patriarch, who seems fascinated by Noemi. And not even of the house itself, which begins to invade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Noemi's only ally in this inhospitable place is the family's youngest son. But he too may be hiding something dark. For there are many secrets behind the walls of High Place, as Noemi discovers when she begins to unearth stories of violence and madness. Mesmerized by this terrifying yet seductive world, Noemi may soon find it impossible to save her cousin, or even escape this enigmatic house. What I loved about this book is it uses a trope that is now very, very largely seen in horror. And I didn't see it coming, and it was the first time I really read a book that really leaned heavily into this horror trope. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want to ruin the final third of this book for you. But this is the one book that I feel like I don't hate on for using that trope, because I liked how it was done, and it was the first time I experienced it before I realized that everybody afterwards was just using it to absolutely oblivion. So you might read this and be like, doesn't she hate that kind of horror trope? And yes, the answer is I do, but I think in this book it worked really, really well. And to me, it was the first book that hopped on this trend. So it is the trendsetter of the trope that I hate, but done the first time, done very well. And it is a very unique book. It's definitely my favorite thing that I've read from Silvia Moreno Garcia. And last but not least, we're going to go through one more Darcy Coats book, because I couldn't not include this on this list because I adore this series. This is my favorite like horror series ever. This is The Whispering Dead by Darcy Coats. This is the Gravekeeper series. This is book 1. I'm not sure how many books are going to be in it, but I've read 4 of them, and they are all so cozy and lovely and wonderful, while still balancing a lot of really scary topics and adventures. And our 3 main characters, and as you continue down, you get a couple more, I think are just absolutely fantastic, and I love them, and I want this to be a series, and I want to watch it on, hopefully not Netflix, because they would actually cancel it, but maybe Hulu or FX can do it. But I think this is the perfect cozy series, and again, Darcy Coats, queen of cozy horror, so I had to include this one. She hears them whispering. Homeless, hunted, and desperate to escape a bitter storm, Kira takes refuge in an abandoned groundskeeper's cottage, tucked away at the edge of a cemetery. It's surrounded on all sides by gravestones, some recent, some hundreds of years old, all suffering from neglect. And in the darkness, she can hear the unquiet dead whispering. The cemetery is alive with faint spectral shapes, led by a woman who died before her time, and Kira, the only person who could see her, has become her new target. Determined to help put the ghost to rest, Kira digs into the spirit's past life with the help of unlikely new friends and discovers a history of deception, ill-fated love, and murder. But the past is not as simple as it seems, and Kira's time is running out. Tangled in a dangerous web, she has to find a new way to free the spirit, even if it means offering her own life in return. What's great about this book is this book has an overarching story to the entirety of the series, and yet the first few books can also be contained within themselves. You have a lot of almost like Scooby-Doo style mysteries within them, and then this kind of overarching expanse of, I don't even know how I would describe it without ruining the book, but there is like a secret organization after our main character. That's what sets the series into motion. And then you have these self-contained stories within books 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. By the time you get to 4, you've got a lot of answers for the overall story of the series, but you can still read them as these one-off books. Don't read them out of order though, and still get very, very satisfied. Like, you do have these cute little conclusions, and I feel like a lot of my issues with series is that doesn't happen. Like Briar Dark, I think, was a great first entry to a series, but I was left with so many unanswered questions, and I feel like for this one, you don't quite have that effect. You still have a lot of questions answered within the central story of the book, and then the overarching story of the entire series kind of gets answered progressively with each book that you read. And I love that for Darcy Coats, and I think this is a really interesting way to almost branch into like sci-fi through horror. I'm just gonna leave it at that. There's definitely a little bit of like X-Files style, like sci-fi secret agents rooted in reality kind of style of horror with this, and I just think it's fantastic. If you like the X-Files, you'll probably really like this. Except it's much cozier, not quite as scary as some of the X-File episodes. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed my cozy horror reads. Please let me know down in the comments down below other authors that I should definitely be checking out. I definitely want to include more cozy horror throughout my year and discover new authors. I love that, and I love using cozy horror as palette cleansers between some of the more extreme stuff that I read. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!